Hey, this is Lee Balcom, and we're wanting to look at something today that is in my program. And here's the problem. Many people, by the time they get my program, tell me they've already done these things. So this is from my Save the Marriage system. I'm talking about the 5 things you do not want to do if your spouse wants out, if your spouse wants a separation, wants to leave the marriage, says they're unhappy, any of that. Anytime there is a marriage crisis, these 5 things you want to avoid. And again, the reason that I want to give them to you right now is because this may be the first stop for you on what do you do because there's a crisis. I don't know how many times people have said to me, oh, I've already violated all 5 of these things, right? And so part of what I did in the system is create a module to tell you what not to do. We're going to talk about those 5 things today. And then the rest of the program is to tell you what to do. It's not enough to know what to avoid. You've got to know how to act to move forward in order to save your marriage. So let's jump into this today and cover these 5 things. So number 1, don't panic. This is the first mistake I see people. They just go into panic mode. And you got to take a breath, take a kind of a step back and recognize that you're not the first person or first marriage that's had a problem. B, a crisis can be the start of something new, something better in your relationship if you know how to move forward. C, there are lots of ways to move to the off-ramp of the crisis. And so the first thing you don't want to do is panic, because many times when people contact me, the actions they've taken are so panic-driven that they've actually propelled the crisis forward without meaning to, right? They didn't want the marriage to end. And I don't know how many times I've talked to people who went from, I'm not happy, to we're filing for divorce in a matter of a short span because they panicked. So don't panic. Part of what you want to do is equip yourself. One of the ways that, at least for myself, I've determined that I can deal with panicky situations is to have kind of a plan on how to move forward. Panic or plan. That's kind of your option. Panic or plan. If you have a plan, then you put that in your place and you start moving forward. If you don't have a plan, you will panic. So we want to make sure that you don't get caught in that. First big mistake. So number 1, do not panic. Number 2, and this is a biggie that I see all the time, don't run to an attorney. Sometimes I talk with people and they have gotten all the way to a divorce, and I'll say, did you want that divorce? And they said, no, but I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe I would catch their attention if I filed for divorce. And so I'll say to them, so let me get this right. Your spouse says, I'm not happy. Your response to that is, and you want to save your marriage, right? So you got, I'm not happy. You want to save your marriage, but instead you join their camp and run to an attorney and file for divorce, creating the exact circumstance that you say you don't want to have, right? That's the problem. So don't run to an attorney. There's plenty of time down the road if you need to get consultation, if you need to talk with somebody, but don't make that as your action right off the bat. Let's see if we can resolve it. If you can get to a happy marriage, you're not ever going to need that attorney, and so there's no reason to bring one in. And I'll give you a secret. Almost every attorney, if you talk with them, will move you towards divorce. You know why? That's their job. They're there to help you dissolve the relationship, and maybe they do it in kinder, gentler ways, but that's what they do. That's their job. They're not there to tell you don't divorce. There are a few, and I count a couple of them as my friends, that when they go into the process, their first thing is to say, is there any way to resolve this? Is there some way we can avoid this? But that is not the first step for most attorneys. So don't run to an attorney. Let's go this way, since I'm counting. Number 3, don't tell the world. Sometimes I have people who tell me that the first thing they did after having that conversation is they called their family, they called some friends, they called all of these people. Don't tell the world about your crisis. Don't blurt it out to your kids right off the bat, or to your family, or to friends, or at church, or synagogue, or wherever you worship, or anywhere else. Don't do that. Why? If you move forward and you manage to save your marriage, what do you do with all those people who have now, even if you didn't want them to, chosen sides? Who have now maybe have a different opinion about your spouse than they did before? How do you bring them back in to the process? Many times people resolve their marriage and they still have family and friends going, wait, that's not going to work out and you need to get divorced. And that's the other thing that happens. You're asking people, whether you mean to or not, you're asking people to kind of choose the direction they're going. And most don't want you, and if you're telling them, they're probably your loved ones, they don't want you in pain. And so what they're trying to do is figure out a way to get you out of pain. And because of how our country looks at marriage and divorce now, the way to get out of pain is often seen as leave the marriage. The problem is that that's not the way out of pain. In fact, that's running straight to pain. And people don't, they underestimate just how painful that process is. So don't start off by telling all your family about that or all your friends about that or all your community about that. First, start with working on changing what's broken in your relationship. Connection, as I've talked about in other pieces, and stagnation, right? And maybe being on the wrong path. And those three pieces of connecting with your spouse and changing yourself and creating a new path is what we talk about in my program, because those are the ways that we bring healing to it. If the relationship is painful, divorce is painful too. But guess what? There's a way of making the relationship work. So that's what we're trying to move towards, to get to a relationship that you both would treasure and hold on to and protect. Divorce isn't the way out of pain. It's just that that's the answer that people run through in their heads. So let me just say, that doesn't mean you don't tell anyone. Find maybe a trusted friend who will not hold it against your spouse. Find a trusted mentor or advisor or counselor or minister or coach or somebody who can help you walk through that. Someone who's not going to choose sides, number one. Somebody who is going to allow you to struggle through this without telling you what to do, number two. And someone who is able to then work on the new situation when you get to the place where your marriage is back to health. Okay, so number three, don't tell the world. Number four, don't blame, don't shame, don't beg, don't manipulate. Those are what I see all the time. People are blaming, this is all your fault or what you've done. Shame on you for bringing this on the family. Or please, please don't leave me. What will I be? What will I do? Or they start going, oh, so let's use some manipulation, reverse psychology, some other thing that you read about somewhere or saw something that said that you can trick them or somehow fool them back into the relationship. Those things don't work. Blaming, shaming, begging, manipulating, all of those pieces do not help bring it back together. In fact, what they generally do is they verify in the mind of your spouse that things are truly broken. They see the negative side of you at that moment. They don't see anything other than that. And that brings us to number 5. Don't try to become what you think your spouse might want. Don't try to transform yourself into that. Part of what happens is you start going, I'll change, I'll be anything you want me to be. And what your spouse goes is, well, that's pretty spineless and that's pretty pitiful. And by the way, you're probably not going to get it right. So you don't have to try to become what you think they want you to be. Does that mean you ignore feedback? No. You take it in and you assess it and you decide, is this something I need to change? Is this something that it truly is holding me back? And if it's holding you back in your marriage and other places in life, and you see where you keep tripping up on it, that might be some place to say, I've got to put that on my list of things to change about myself. Number 2, change yourself. So I'm not saying don't change. You absolutely have to change. You have to change the relationship. You have to change yourself, and you have to change how you've been understanding the relationship. You absolutely have to do that. I'm now talking about just that. Can I figure out how to be what they want? It's not going to work. Don't get caught up in that. Okay, so that's the big five. Don't panic. Don't run to the attorney. Don't tell the world. Don't blame. Don't shame. Don't beg. Don't manipulate. None of that. And don't try to become what you think they want you to be. Do work on connecting. Do work on changing yourself, expanding yourself, growing, and moving into a less stagnant place. Do change the path you're working on. Create a new path and decide how to move your marriage to a new place. That's the 5 things not to do. I've already told you the 3 things to do. If you need help with those 3 things, please come visit me. SaveTheMarriage.com. That's SaveTheMarriage.com. I've been doing this now for over 3 decades. My program has been used around the world by now close to 100,000 people that we know about. It's powerful and can work for you, but you've got to make the first step. Don't make those bad 5 steps. Make a good first step. Visit me, SaveTheMarriage.com. This is Lee Balcom wishing you the best as you work to save your marriage.